Kenya's economy is feeling the pressure of the exchange rate and they needed to do something. So what is that decision that they made? So the final decision that they made was to increase the CBK rate from 12.5% to 13%. So, but what have they said now about the next few months? So is the inflation going to increase or is it going to remain the same? Inflation is expected to increase in the next 3 months because of high import costs due to depreciation of the exchange rates. The exchange rate's depreciation is causing inflation. How many of you know the relationship between exchange rates and depreciation? Don't worry, if you don't know much about that, that is why I'm here. I'm going to explain to you exactly what the relationship between exchange rates and inflation is. So the Monetary Policy Committee has said inflation is expected to increase in the next 3 months because of high import costs due to depreciation of the exchange rate. Whenever the exchange rate is depreciating, whenever the Kenya shillings is depreciating against its major currencies, the USD, the sterling pound, the euros, Japanese yen, Ugandan shillings, Tanzanian shillings, it means if you intend to import, of which we do a lot of importation, it will cost you more for you to be able to purchase the commodities that you're purchasing from this country. And as a result, that cost always is transferred to the local consumer. As you increase the amount of money that you're sacrificing for you to do the importation, you will transfer that cost to the consumer. And of course, that will have an effect of increasing prices to the local consumer. So because of the depreciating Kenya shillings, they have said that inflation is expected to increase. So if they're expecting it to increase even beyond what is there right now, can we then automatically conclude then they're expecting the Kenya shillings either to remain at this high level or to depreciate further? Can we conclude that? Is it justifiable for us to conclude that? I personally think that from some statements you can already start telling where we are headed. So automatically I can tell you that because they are expecting inflation to increase as a result of the import costs, which are as a result of exchange rate, then it tells you that the Kenya shillings might not go back to where Kenyans think it will go back. Even if it stabilizes, it will stabilize right now just around the 150 something. So look forward to a Kenya shillings that will stabilize at those levels. Don't expect it to go back to the 120s or the 130 that it was maybe 6 months ago. So one of the other things that they have said is that the real GDP is growing at 5.9% compared to 4.3% in 2022. So this is where I was asking Kenyans. The real GDP of the economy is still growing, despite all the complaints that we have. And I am not being insensitive to what is happening in our country. I'm just trying to look at the facts and to try to understand what is happening. So despite all the complaints and the noise that we are making as a nation, our real GDP is growing at 5.9%, which is higher, around 1.6 higher than what it was in 2022. So someone might ask me, what is real GDP? First of all, what is even the GDP? The GDP of a country is the national output. It is just what the country is producing. So the country was producing 5.9 more as compared to 2022 where it was 4.3. That is the gross GDP. But the real GDP is now when you adjust that growth with inflation. So when you remove the inflationary effects of that growth, how much are we doing? So it means Kenya is doing at 5.9% real GDP. And this is what I told you. You see, Kenya is a developing country, but it has a real GDP growth of around 5.9%. You can never see those numbers in a developed country. But in developing countries, that is definitely a figure that you might easily come across. What could be causing that growth? Why is our economy being recorded as growing at a rate of around 5.9% while clearly the sentiments of the citizens is that our economy is depreciating and it's going further down? It is expected to remain strong in 2024, supported by resilient services sector. So guys, I've always told you. So the MPC is saying that they're expecting this growth to be sustained because of resilient services sector. And I think I've always told you that the services industry in Kenya is very resilient. Kenya has one of those best services sector because even if you look at our balance of payment, so balance of payment is exports compared to our imports. When you look at the goods balance of payments, we are at a deficit. We are importing way more than we are. But when you look at the services, we normally have a surplus balance of payment on the services sector. That means we are exporting way more than we are importing. So it tells you that the services sector of the Kenyan economy is the backbone. It is really what is driving our economy. So those services industries have been resilient enough for them to support our economy. And they are continuing to do that. And soon enough, I'm going to compare that with other countries so that we see how are other countries expected to grow in the foreseeable future. What the MPC did before they have their meetings, they normally go to meet these guys called the CEOs. They try to meet CEOs and they do market surveys. They just do market surveys to see what these people have to say about the economy. And these respondents, the CEOs of these companies, are optimistic about business performance, especially because of agriculture. Globally, it has already been forecasted that inflation is going to ease. So as a result, both the fiscal policies and the monetary policies are expected to be loosened a bit. So CEOs are very optimistic. And when you loosen the monetary policy, it has an effect of opening up the economy. It has the effect of increasing a bit of the money supply and increasing demand. So that means CEOs are expecting that the economy is going to, they are very optimistic about the economy, and they are saying, especially in Kenya, that agriculture is showing some good sign. And you remember, agriculture is the sector that the current president or the current administration has been focusing its efforts on. So are we seeing some of the input or the efforts that have been put in agriculture actually now starting to show results? Is that what we are seeing? The only thing they are concerned about, of course, is they are concerned with the weakened consumer demand. They have said that the demand from consumers has not gone up as they would expect, and they're wondering what is the issue. And I told you, it's very clear what the weakening Kenya shillings. The weakening Kenya shillings has pushed up inflation. Inflation will definitely cause the consumers to slow down on their demand, because now those prices will make consumers think twice about spending. And that is why, as a result of that, the Monetary Policy Committee sat down and thought of how to proceed the weakening shilling and the high interest rate. The other thing that they talked about is the CBK foreign exchange reserves is at 7,000 million USD. What do you guys think the exchange rate reserve is? So every country normally has a reserve of the foreign currencies. Traditionally, before the current financial system was put in place, it was the gold standard. That means countries would store their wealth in gold form, because gold was the agreeable or agreed payment system. So in case you wanted to import something from another country, you will take your gold and exchange for that commodity. If you wanted to food, you will exchange with gold. So gold was a reserve of wealth. So if you needed to transact with other, you will use gold. But of course, that changed because of some other weaknesses of the gold. Now we went into foreign currencies. And in Kenya, they have a reserve of around 7,000 million USD. What does that mean? That gives them an idea of how well we are covered as a nation when it comes to the needs of importing. You don't want to reach a point as a country where you cannot be able to import things because you don't have the foreign currencies. Why? Because you don't import with your local currency. You don't buy things in America with Kenya shilling. You don't buy things in Japan with Kenya shilling. So you have to have a reserve of the foreign currencies. And it is normally in USD majority of the time, because USD is the international agreed currency for international trade. So how much is this 7,000 enough? How long does it cover? It covers around 3.8 months. Even if there is no more foreign currency that was to come into Kenya right now, we are able to continue importing what we need in terms of fuel, in terms of food, in terms of non-food, non-fuel commodities for the next 3 months, and the economy will run. But after 3 months, then we'll start struggling because we will not have any more reserves. The question is 3.8 months sufficient? The MPC are saying that is sufficient, but I know for sure there are countries around us, and I'm talking about Tanzania, which has around 4.7 months. So the goal is normally to have a good cover for a longer period of time. But of course now, what does it take for you to get those foreign currency reserves? And you have to export, you have to significantly improve your balance of payment accounts for you to be able to increase these foreign reserves. We are covered for the next 3.8 months, but I personally think that 3.8 months is a bit little. You could see this clearly when Corona happened. We had to go for the IMF loan, the one that is called the rapid something loan, which is given to countries in dire need of support, especially during a global crisis. And then we have now, there was a growth, they finally said there was a growth in commercial bank lending at around 13.9% in December 2023. And loan applications have remained resilient, showing sustained demand for working capital requirements. So what the MPC are saying, commercial banks have continued lending and they still demand for credit. If you ever want to know that the economy is slowing down, people will stop borrowing because they are not sure whether they'll be able to repay the monies soon. They're not sure even, they don't want to invest money anymore because they're not sure about the future. But anytime you see that lending from commercial banks is going up significantly, it means that there's a level of optimism, and you can see it even from the CEO's report that they are optimistic about the future. And that has been shown by an increased level of demand from commercial banks. They're lending more, and that of course is caused by a demand for working capital requirements. So people who don't know what working capital requirements are, this is the money that companies need for them to continue doing business, for them to even invest in more business. So why will you invest in more business if you are not sure about the future? And the MPC, who are the prefects, who are the foreseer of what is going to happen to our economy, have stated that, and they're looking up to the economy getting better. Ladies and gentlemen, after looking at all those factors, these guys sat down and they said the two major items that are of concern are, of course, the interest rates, inflation, and the exchange rates. And therefore, they still felt that Kenya's economy is feeling the pressure of the exchange rate and they needed to do something. So what is that decision that they made? So the final decision that they made was to increase the CBK rate from 12.5% to 13%. What do you guys think that means? When the CBK increases the central bank rate, that is normally used as the standard of what the commercial banks are going to charge to the consumers, because the CBK rate is the rate that the CBK uses to loan out money from to the banks, or to even get money back from the banks. It is the tool that they use for them to manage money supply, because they manage money supply through increasing liquidity or decreasing liquidity, through lending from the banks and through borrowing from the bank. When they increase this rate from 12.5% to 13%, it means if the commercial banks are going to get the money from the central bank at 13%, then you definitely expect them to increase, of course, their interest rate. Because normally what business people do, and including commercial banks, they will never touch their margins. Business people don't touch their margins. So they will always transfer that effect to the consumers. So you're definitely expecting that the interest rates will go up, which they already went. But an increase in interest rates normally have the effect of reducing the exchange rates, or managing the exchange rates, stabilizing the exchange rate. So that is a direct action that the monetary policy has taken to stabilize the Kenya's exchange rate. And you can already see that it has left the 160 mark. It has come back to around 150 something. Just by the move of the MPC to increase the central bank rate from 12.5 to 13%, you already see that the Kenya shillings has come back to around 153. It is currently trading at 153. So it is very obvious, guys. You can see what I'm talking about. I've been telling you that there is an economic relationship between these things. And if the MPC really wanted even to bring that Kenya shillings further down, they could have done that. They will just increase the interest rate. What is the challenge? Why are they moving the interest rates very slowly? Because like I told you, the existing or the present administration of President William Ruto, they're not so much interested in trying to use the MPC as the major tool for managing the exchange rate. They are trying to manage the exchange rate through fiscal policy and of course through the market forces. And that is why you see even the move from 12.5 to 13% is just to manage that, so that it doesn't really go out of control. So you're expecting that the Kenya shillings will stabilize, but I think it will just stabilize around 150 something there, and it is already at 153. And then now you will see inflation now being managed slightly, because now it means that importing of commodities will be cheaper, slightly cheaper than before, and that will trickle down to the prices of commodities locally. So ladies and gentlemen, that is what I had for you today. I wanted to give you an update of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting which happened on 6th of February. Now, for more of this kind of information, you need to subscribe to this channel, you need to hit that notification bell, and you need to tell the world about this channel. As you can see, it is a channel that will definitely change your perceptions about so many things. It will impart your knowledge about your country, the continent, and the world, and I'm just here for it. I can't wait to give you more. So I look forward to seeing you next on this episode that will be coming out soon. Thank you very much, and see you guys.